just was chewing very, very hard on a lifesaver. You know how hard it is to talk when you've got a lifesaver in your mouth? That's very good. The other thing I'm going to try to do is cover up my tie. I have a terrible habit of whatever I eat winds up on my tie. I had a lunch today, and there's a little spaghetti sauce over here on the tie. Good, thank you. You made my day. You made my day. Well, how can I get it off? It does, you're right. I've got to start buying more ties like this so they blend in, because a day never goes by that I don't ruin a tie. And my poor wife, I bring them home and I give her the dubious responsibility of trying to figure out how to get it off, because I try and I make it worse. So the cleaner will do it. Today's another special day for me, and I know Phyllis will understand this. I have someone with me today who is been with me for 12 years, and she is my secretary. I usually have a staff person that travels with me, and I have a trooper around here that travels with me. But Sue was very instrumental in bringing me here today. She got a telephone call and has been arranging this and insisting that I come today, and trying to be sure the rest of my schedule fitted. Well, the normal staff person who's with me as when I go around and assist me is on vacation this week. Now, Sue was my legal secretary for 6 years, and when I came into government, I persuaded her to follow me. She has since married my chief of staff in that process, and so they've got a real tag team going on. But this is the first time in all the years that she's been with me that she's ever been out in public. She usually sits back in the office and be sure my life is running in some degree of order, which is, anyone who knows my kind of unusual personality, eating habits, sleeping habits, things like that, would really appreciate it. But I do have Sue with me, and but for her, I wouldn't be here today for sure. And I don't know how prepared I am, but Sue Hassenbauer is sitting right over here. So wave at her. She said she had to be. Sue has been a very important person in my life for a whole long time, and it's nice to have her get to see what the fruits of her labors are. All these. So she's been with me all day, and yeah, she's a doll. Today's I was searching around for a topic really to talk about today, and it's always difficult when you're out making presentations to various groups. They have various subject matters that they're interested in. I had a luncheon today with a combination of private sector, security people, and governmental law enforcement people. It's always very easy. I talked about the law enforcement structure in the state and how unique New Jersey is to have the kind of structure that we have. But it's much harder when you're dealing with an intellectual audience that is regular attendees of libraries. I was libraries, you should know. Oh, that's right, she told me. She made me say that. Libraries are one of my pet projects in government. We all of us who come into public service for a while have the little things that are not the big issues of the day that are we think are important. And libraries have always been one of them. When I got on my Oakland council about 10 or 12 years ago in Oakland, I was appointed by the mayor as a liaison to the library. And there was a library director there who only proceeded to heighten my interest and awareness of what libraries are. You are, right now, the beneficiaries of one of the most profound systems in our democracy, in my opinion, that exists, and it's our library structure. We, as a democracy, and the form of government we have, depend on knowledge and information of the general public. We are not, as much as all of us in various positions of power would like to be benevolent dictators, to get things done more efficiently and effectively, we think we are not. We are a system of government that depends on consensus building. And that system of government is founded on the knowledge and information of people. So the free flow of that information and those vehicles that we have in our society for the free flowing of that information become critical components to the success of the whole system and its continued success. Obviously, the news media is the primary deliverer of that information. But when you get down to the depth and the substance of issues and information, the availability of data and information is that foundation. in this state, our free library system is one of the major tools that we have to guarantee whether these books in this room and all the other libraries around the state are actually read are not as important as, and that, I believe that's important, but not as important as the fact that they're here, and that they're available, and that the information in them are available, and that they are, as institutions, able to do things like this, so that people like myself can come talk to people like you who are interested in what our society is doing and where it's going, to gain the information, so we have the kind of participatory republic, I will call it, that we really are, with representative forms of government. It requires a knowledgeable public in order to exist, and libraries are part of the backbone of that. So I have been, as I sat on that library board, I have my little closet projects in the state of New Jersey have been our free public library system. And I've had the distinct pleasure over the last a few years to even be more influential in that. As the Governor's Counsel for 4 years before I became Attorney General, I was lucky, as Tom came, I was the Governor's Counsel for because he happens to agree with me very readily. I wrote the state budget every year for him. And I was able in that process to deal with the governor who believes that education is the most important thing that we have, to try to permit libraries to grow and mature and to deliver more than they had before, or at least try not to lose any more ground. So I've worked on every piece of library legislation and project for the last 12 years, 13 years in the state of New Jersey. And I'm very proud of this free public library system. So it allows people like me who have positions that have the obligation to deliver services to people and make decisions, have the vehicles to come out and even appear here. And that you have the ability to come here and absorb some of that information, whether it's in this group or whether it's out of all of these books that are in this room, for pleasure and or for yeah.
Thank you to Phyllis for her good taste.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful reading.
And I mean that sincerely. The libraries are so important, and some of my treasures are a couple of the things that I've been able to do with reference to the library system to guarantee its continued educational opportunity. And think about it. What other available source of continuing information is available to the average citizen but through its library? That isn't censored, that isn't controlled, that somebody isn't making a choice for you, that's unfettered, for which you can come and get any information about any subject matter that you want. Where would we be as a democratic society without that particular availability? So I'm very happy to be here in a library talking to a group of individuals who obviously care enough about information and involvement in this process. Now, it's always necessary, I think, for me to explain a little bit about what an Attorney General is and what they do. So many people have a stereotype, especially in the northern part of the state, as to what the various roles of government officials are, influenced by all kinds of different sources. The New York media becomes a far more, electronic television media becomes a far more powerful, influential force in setting mindsets as to what somebody's role is in life than, I'm sorry to say, who are newspapers and our capacities to communicate the state. So a lot of people have an idea of the Attorney General in New Jersey, and they look at Bob Abrams in New York. And they don't look at Cary Edwards or Erwin Kimmelman or Jimmy Zazali or John Degnan or Attorney General Highland or Kugler, who were my predecessors. They think of Louis Lefkowitz and Bob Abrams. And there's no comparison between the two. There's no comparison between the jobs that we do, our responsibilities. That doesn't mean that theirs is better or ours is better. It's just different. And the Attorney General in this state is one of the most significant offices that we have. When you compare, and this isn't me, and please, this isn't a discussion on the self-aggrandizement of Cary Edwards. I'm the lucky person who got to sit in this position. It is through the wisdom of people that preceded me that have created this, going all the way back to our 47th Constitution. But all of you know that we talk about the 200th anniversary of the United States Constitution. This is the 40th anniversary, 1987 was, of our New Jersey Constitution, one of the most profound state systems of government that's ever been put together in this country. And I can tell you, as someone over the last 8-9 years who's been traveling all over this country, dealing with the other 50 states and their structures and the federal government, how profound this one is. Thanks to the courage of Al Driscoll in 1947, who risked his entire political career to make a better system of government for the state. That constitutional structure and what's been built on it is just starting to hit its stride. We in New Jersey have, thank goodness, have been able to recognize who and what we are in recent years and to take a great deal of pride in what we do in many ways. But you have to travel outside of New Jersey, take some of the programs and things that we're doing here and how exciting they are and compare them to what the other states are doing. And then you really begin to appreciate what the state of New Jersey is becoming and can become into the future. The Attorney General's position is one of those that was created in that 1947 Constitution. The 200th anniversary of our United States Constitution kind of links to that too. There were 4 delegates to the Constitutional Convention in New Jersey. One of them was a man by the name of William Patterson, who was the first Attorney General in the state of New Jersey. I'm the 47th Attorney General in that role. I, however, sit with the powers and responsibilities dictated by our Constitution of 1947 and certain statutes that follow that. Let me give you some examples. I'm the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state. Now, of the 50 states, there's probably about 10 or 12 of them in which the Attorney General is referred to as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer. New York is not one of those. Bob Abrams is not the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of New York. Now, it's very nice to have a title as a Chief Law Enforcement Officer. And the other 12 states, 14 states out there that have the same title, don't necessarily back it up with the responsibilities that go with that, other than the moral persuasion that it's linked to it. But in New Jersey, we've set up a structure that makes that position real. In the Department of Law and Public Safety, which is my department in the cabinet structure, by the way, they tell you that I'm a constitutional officer and I got a 4-year appointment. That means I can't be fired. Now, you know, this is the first job in my entire life I can't be fired. But I told the governor, we were walking down Inauguration Day, and he gets inaugurated in the morning, and myself and Jane Burgio, the Secretary of State, as constantly sworn in the afternoon, our term is 4 years. I said, Governor, last chance. If you can change your mind now, otherwise you're stuck with me for 4 years. For better or for worse, as they say in America. But it has the power of the constitutional office behind it. But that has been enhanced by various statutes in that chief law enforcement category. Example, the Division of State Police reports to the Attorney General. The Division of Criminal Justice, which has original grand jury and some of the most modern investigatory authority anywhere in the country. A wiretapping, a lot of other. Whether you agree with them or not is not as important as that structure. The 21 county prosecutors are supervised and can be superseded by the Attorney General of the state. I am appointed, not elected. 43 of the Attorney Generals are elected. Most of the prosecutors and DAs around the country are elected, not appointed. These prosecutors are appointed. There was an act passed in 1970 called the Criminal Justice Act in 1970 in response to one of the darker clouds that have hung over New Jersey for years. And I'm sure all of you remember Life magazine article, those who've been in New Jersey long enough, painting New Jersey as the bedroom of organized crime, as the home of organized crime, as having a system of government that is corrupt and linked to organized criminal activity. There was a lot of truth to that. New Jersey's governmental structures, institutions, were too comfortable with various criminal elements. I bet you also don't know that organized crime began in New Jersey and began in Atlantic City, of no other places, back in the 1920s and the 1930s. That's where the first group of La Cosa Nostra families and individuals met and formulated what made it organized crime in the true sense. And the institutions and the officials in New Jersey turned a blind eye and wore blinders when it came to that activity. Very dramatically pointed out in that Life magazine article of 1966. In response to that, to the credit of the institutions in the state and the politicians and the people of the state, they passed the Criminal Justice Act of 1970, which brought this criminal justice system under one umbrella, under the umbrella of the Attorney General. Over the last 17 or 18 years, through my predecessors, and we have a father, I guess, in the modern Attorney General's office, and he grew up and formed this operation in one of the more turbulent corruption eras of our times, was George Kugler. George Kugler was the Attorney General in 1970. The tradition of Attorneys Generals before that was when they came into office, they were Republican, they hired all Republican lawyers. They were Democrats, they hired all Democratic lawyers. The others all left. George decided to do two things. He decided to change that and decided to develop a tradition of nonpartisan professional staffs in legal and criminal justice side. And he was the Attorney General who presided over the installation of that Criminal Justice Act of 1970, which put state police, prosecutors, and all of those people in place. I like to think the criminal justice system in New Jersey is in its adolescence. It's about 17 or 18 years old. And we're just leaping into our adulthood. And I'm the lucky guy, and I mean this very profoundly, who happen to be in this point in time when it's time to make that transition from adolescence in growth to maturity. And I can do that in this state based on the role of the Attorney General. We have been recognized for the programs and the professional people that have developed in the criminal justice system in this state all over the country. I'm a member of an executive working group that advises the Justice Department on national criminal justice policy. It's made up of 5 attorneys general, 5 district attorneys, and 5 of the senior members of the Justice Department in Washington. And I was just down there on Thursday and Friday last week, and we meet every quarter. And they were highlighting New Jersey's system and New Jersey's law enforcement programs, more particularly a new narcotics law and a narcotics action plan, which they're going to use as a model for the national drug strategy to get the other states to try to come up to speed on that issue. And there are many examples of that that fall under this umbrella. So I got this criminal justice chief law enforcement hat that I wear to set priorities in public policy. I'm not an expert investigator or cop or even prosecuting lawyer, but I'm good at public policy and criminal justice public policy. Now, that's one of the hats that I wear. And this is why I tend to be the envy of all the NAG meetings I go to. NAG is the National Association of Attorneys General. I'm also the chief civil lawyer of the state. Right about that same point in time, they passed a statute that said the Attorney General shall represent every agency of state government. There are 10,000 pending civil cases in the courts of the state for which I am the lawyer. And I have 300 lawyers who work for me in the Division of Law that represent the state civilly. Now, that sounds like a monopoly, and it is. Let me tell you the beauty of that particular monopoly, not because it gives me a lot of power, but because it helps the state. It's part of the check and balance system that we put together. We can now have an administration and program that are consistently interpreted department by department. I'm constantly being asked by some commissioner or agency who doesn't agree with the decision of another agency that affects them, if they can sue them in court. Now, how good would it be if we had an administrative branch of government under a governor with all the agencies and subbureaus suing each other all the time? What a waste of money to start off with just in litigation. By having the Attorney General with the power to issue legal opinions that have the force of law unless overturned by the court, and representing all the agencies, we become part of the check and balance system to be sure it maintains a consistent process and one that is as efficient and as effective as it can be. Again, very unique in this country. Now, I have 6 or 8 other divisions that are in that process, including my more infamous division of motor vehicles. You all know the division of motor vehicles. Why do everybody giggle whenever I get smirks every time I talk about the division of motor vehicles? Well, I won't bore you with that, but I promise you, we're going to have the best motor vehicle operation in the country. I believe government can be made to work, and I'm going to prove it with the division of motor vehicles. You wait and see. It's getting better and better, and in another 12 months or 18 months, I hope you'll all get a chance to look at it. If you think it's running well, write me a letter and tell me that. If you think it's not, that's even more important. Write me a letter and tell me how it can make it a little bit better.
You'll have to come back here.
Maybe I will. I'll be happy to do that. One thing when you do that, though, let me caution you real quick. 24 million transactions are done by the Division of Motor Vehicles. It's run by human beings. Human beings will make mistakes. We have a 1% error rate. That's 240,000 mistakes. If it's within an acceptable range of mistakes, human beings could possibly design a system for it. And you make the judgment about motor vehicles. Make it by how they correct that mistake, not the fact that it happened. and how courteously and efficiently they do that. Motor vehicle people are customers. They pay $500 million a year to get their license and their title and their registration. It only costs us about $110 million a year to do it. It's a very profit-making operation for government. The least we can do is deliver what is a necessity of life in an efficient and courteous way. And I think we're going to do that. So I had that little thing sitting under my umbrella. You know the Division of Gaming Enforcement. I mean, you don't know the Division of Gaming Enforcement. I'm sure nobody does. It's one of the hidden things. Gaming, casinos, Atlantic City. Everybody knows the Casino Control Commission because they're the judges of that. But the Division of Gaming Enforcement are the ones who do the investigations and present the cases to the Division of Gaming, to the Casino Control Commission. In being sure that that activity in Atlantic City and the experiment that it represents and all the benefits and problems that it has brought are done according to the rules and according to the statute, free of criminal activity and free of corruption. And I believe they've been very successful in accomplishing that particular goal. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but that means they've done, in my opinion, what they should. I also have the Division of Civil Affairs and Alcohol and Beverage Control, Division of Civil Rights, protecting the civil rights of all of the people of our society, housing and employment. We in New Jersey, you know, we're the first state to adopt a state civil rights statute in 1945. Another example of how we're kind of ahead of everyone else. I have the Athletic Commission, which is our boxing operation for the state, and the Racing Commission, which is a division, in fact, of my department. Most people don't even know that. Now, I compare myself then to the other attorneys general around the country, and none of them even come close.
How about carrying guns?
Carrying guns? I don't carry guns, but my state troopers do. Yes.
No, I'm speaking.
The public, no, the public is not. There are very strict laws on carrying guns. We have very strict laws in the state on carrying handguns. Yes, and as a matter of fact, there's a constant battle going on between Colonel Clint Pagano and the state police and the NRA about the principle that represents. So our Constitution says you have the right to bear arms. We don't interpret that and hasn't been interpreted the right to bear any arms. It is a very strong law. Yes, it is. Well, anyway, that's kind of my area. Now, what's great about this job? I love this job. I got to tell you, being Attorney General in this particular state is the most exciting thing I think I've ever done. Yes.
Do you think it would be possible to get the Boxing Commission to provide headgear for fights in the state of New Jersey to eliminate head injuries to boxers?
Well, we would like to. Well, let me tell you where we've been on boxing. 2 years ago, when I came into this job, just before that, the State Commission on Investigation has done an investigation into all regulation of the boxing industry and the industry. In addition to scathing reports about the quality of that process. And as a result, we put together what I believe to be, and it's not we, meaning me, there's an individual involved in that process, but Larry Hazard. Larry Hazard became the commissioner of the new statute that was passed, and I was council of government when the statute together, to head up that new system in response to what was an absolute failure in regulating the industry. Larry Hazard was an educator from the city of Newark, and a referee and a member of the boxing industry in a peripheral way. And Larry Hazard has done probably one of the finest jobs of putting together a system to regulate the boxing industry anywhere in the country. Larry is now lecturing all over the country and putting together similar systems. His primary goal is to protect the boxer, not to promote it and not even the dollars that the state brings into that particular sport. And he has been more successful in that process. He has removed 30% of the boxers who were licensed in the state, which is incapable of being able to box. He's installed, we just got the medical advisory board up and running, but to do an assessment of things like headgear, whether they matter or they don't matter, what the impact is of wearing headgear versus not. Thumbless gloves, different weight gloves, medical examinations before. It's an incredible process. I take no credit for it. Larry Hazard has done it. He cares more about the box than anyone else. I go through meetings with those people. I get directly regularly. I just left one with him. We did two things. Called in the public advocate to try to represent boxers who've been ripped off by promoters for unconscionable contracts. And we are setting up an education advisory group. A lot of the boxers that go into this industry are signed up by promoters, and particularly out of Philadelphia, we don't have jurisdiction, and trying to get them in continuing educational opportunities to point them in the right direction. They can't box forever. They need that education. and we're starting to make the links. And this is where Larry Hazard, the educator, the principal of the high school in Newark, comes into play.
Wordway School.
Yes, exactly. He's just he's an incredible person and has done just a marvelous job.
He was a boxer himself.
He was an amateur boxer and one of the best referees in the country, one of the most honorable. So that's another part of that process. So it's a marvelous job I have. I get to get into anything, everything that I have the hours to do. And we're doing some exciting things in criminal justice. It was pointed out before that we've got state of sales at EPA on New York mega dump, or as Judge Barry refers to it now, Koch, in the process. That is one of the environmental issues that I spent a lot of time working on. Kind of an interesting story about the garbage that washed up on the shore. Maybe I'll tell you. I'll give you an example of the civil law side of what I do, and then I'm going to answer some questions, and I'll try to answer about any issue more that I can touch on. But this is kind of an interesting way of explaining it. I was out of state on August 14th, 1987, last summer. And I got my trooper was then with me, comes running up and says, "General, you got to call the government. He's trying to get you on the telephone." So they carry a portable phone around with me everywhere I go so that I can make these kind of calls. So I dial the phone, I call the government State House, and he says, "Cary, I am furious about a disaster that's happening along our shore. There's garbage washing up on beaches. There's a 50-mile slick floating around us." He said, "I'm going to go out and have a press conference, and I'm going to lace into the problem and the fact that it happened." And he said, "I'm going to announce that I'm asking you to find out who did it." I said, "Thanks, Governor." I said, "You're my friend, but I don't know if you're going to be my friend after I do this." But he did, and I said, "Absolutely." And I hot-footed it right back to the state right after that and had some meetings. But that's what he did. He went out and asked, with our capacity to do investigation, to pursue this matter to a conclusion, to find solutions to the cause of that particular garbage washing up on our beaches. I did that. I spent 30 days doing an investigation with and as many resources as I could put together. And to the best that we're able, we pinpointed the source of the problem coming out of the city of New York. There's no question about it. That's where it came from. I then proceeded to give my appropriate legal notices that I was going to file suit against New York.
Speak more slowly and louder.
Speak more slowly and louder. At this point, it's fun. That's a funny statement. I used to argue. I was in private practice for 12 years, and I used to argue cases in court a lot. And I do have a tendency to speak very rapidly, and that same voice and that same tone of voice would come out of the court stenographers trying to keep track of my argument on a regular basis. So there was a deja vu. We started to do an investigation into the cause of that. 30 days. I had over 20 investigators and about 4 lawyers from my environmental prosecution section, criminal justice, my environmental section, and Division of Law, along with DEP representatives, Marine Police, Coast Guard people, to ascertain what the cause of that garbage was. We found out it came from New York. Under the federal law, since New York is another state, we're a separate entity, our only rights to sue New York exist in 2 ways. We do it in the United States Supreme Court, and we do it as a citizen court, a citizen's complaint. So the federal laws say we have to file notice with New York. I filed the appropriate notice. I have to wait 60 days to begin that action. And I did that. EPA has a right to step in and do something. So they notice to the EPA and go through all these kind of rigmarole. But it's not. It's a good reason why it's all there. I did all that. And we had proof that the bulk of the garbage that floated up, the actual garbage that floated up on the shore came from the City of New York. We focused a lot of it out of a certain transfer station called the Southwest Brooklyn Incinerator. Now you should know about New York that New York has, 22,000 tons of garbage per day, and they take it all to one place. A landfill on Staten Island, what is now being referred to as Mount Codey. They have systematically, over the last 10 years, closed all other landfills, and they ship no garbage any place but to there. About 14,500 tons of that go by barge from 8 marine transfer stations to that particular landfill. The other 6,000 or 7,000 tons of it go by truck to that landfill. By the year 2000, that landfill will be 510 feet in the air and will be the largest single landfill in the world. It is now about 176 feet high. And it has not been properly run. I was already in suit with New York, with the city of Woodbridge and the Interstate Sanitation Commission because of the way they unloaded the garbage when they got it from the landfill out of those barges. And they were being held in contempt on October 26th, about a month and a half after I filed my notice to sue them. Judge Barry in the federal court held them in contempt for not having done something they should have done in 1985 as to how they unload that garbage. Well, I had them by the throat. They were in contempt for the way they were operating the landfill, which is where the barges are going to that are causing a lot of the garbage to wash up on our beaches. I took advantage of that. And New York, ultimately, because of the threat of my lawsuit against them for the way they load the barges, and the lawsuit we already had them in contempt of court on because of the way they unload the barges, capitulated and allowed us to enter into what we call a consent order with the court. Now, I didn't have to enter into that consent order. I could have sued New York and proved in a court of law that they would have caused that garbage that washed up on the beaches. Because one of the stipulations I gave New York was they don't have to admit it. If they admit it, they're subject to about $1 billion worth of civil suits by the people along the shore, the businesses. They will never, ever admit that they caused that garbage to wash up because the cost would be astronomical. I had to make what was a legal judgment and a strategic judgment. Was I going to continue that litigation for the visceral satisfaction I would get of proving that New York was a culprit, or would I enter into a consent-supervised agreement with penalties attached for non-performance if they would take immediate remedial action? Consequences. If I don't settle it, it'll take me 4 to 8 years to prove it in court and to go through all of the appeals processes because New York would never give up. What would that mean? New York wouldn't do one thing in the interim to stop handling the garbage the way they do, and it would keep washing up on our beaches summer after summer while I'm fooling around the courtroom. If I enter into this particular consent order, New York will have to do remedial things immediately. We can begin improving the shore this summer. Now, the 7.5 million people in New Jersey uniformly wanted me to sue the hell out of them. They were taking out all of their frustrations. I talked to groups. They said, go get them, Cary, sue them, you fix them. Boy, I got stuck on that subway the other week, and they're a bunch of, for every reason other than display all the frustrations that they had about getting stuck in traffic, about getting their purse snatched, their pocket picked, the congestion, anything that they had been, and everybody gets annoyed in New York. Not one person that I was thinking, ooh, I'd like to strangle them. So they were all taken out in this case. So, but that wasn't where we should be. And I made the judgment that we should enter into this consent agreement and order the court for them to take immediate remedial action now and over the next 3 years to remediate every single item that anyone could think of in that process. Before I could even finish the litigation in this case, we will have major modifications in the way New York handles its garbage and have less garbage washing up on our beaches. Not none. Because some of the garbage comes from New Jersey. Make no mistake about that. We have our own problems that we have to deal with. The governor announced, right after I announced that settlement, a $14.2 million program in the state to deal with that also. That's an example of the kind of unilateral responsibilities that the Attorney General has to make decisions to deal with issues. This headline in today's paper is the follow-up to that. While I was doing the investigation on the floatable garbage that was washing up on our beaches, I found about how bad this landfill really was. Now, I can't prove how bad it is because they've never had to supply me with data to get the right permits to run a landfill. It's been in operation since 1949. And EPA, everyone's closed up every other. So I was finishing up the case, and I said, I warned the people of New York before they settled that I was coming after them on the quality of the landfill. I don't think we need a 510-foot landfill in Staten Island for the people of Staten Island and Woodbridge and New Jersey and the whole Hudson Bay area. I don't think we need a million tons of water per day draining into the Hudson Bay. It's called leachate, which is the water that filters through the landfill, picks up all the toxicity from it, and then washes into the water. Make no other mistake about it. That water, without that million gallons, is already toxic. You could take, I don't know if I have, take a coffee cup someday, if you're ever around the Woodbridge or the Orchard Kill, put the coffee cup in the water. Leave it there for a month. Come back and take it out of the water. You'll see it's exactly the same as you put it in. Then take a coffee cup and take it to a nice clean stream someplace, or someplace in an ocean area, and put it in the water. Leave it there for a month and come back. You'll find it covered with algae and all kind of growth. There's no growth. If the Arthur Kill is dead. Now that doesn't mean it's dead permanently. That means it needs to be revived. It doesn't need another million gallons a day of contaminated leachate off the largest landfill in the world. And so it's my job. We're between a rock and a hard place because New York's got no place else to put its garbage. I can't go to court and get that landfill closed. I don't have the proofs that can justify it because you'd have 7.5 million people's garbage backing up in the streets of New York because they have no place to deliver it. But what I want out of this is them to meet, they can do things. They can put treatment facilities, which is what you do with landfills, take that leachate and treat it till it's clean water. They can test the stability of that landfill and give it a date certain to close it, to be sure that the sides of it are stable. Nobody knows if you build a landfill 500 feet high, it's going to cave in. And when a landfill caves in, it literally falls into the Arctic Kill. That's what will happen. Picture a mountain 500 feet and the side of it just falling right into the Hudson Bay, and it's all garbage. Those are the kind of things we're trying to prevent from happening. That's a little bit about what the Attorney General does. We're also self-insured. I do tort claims. I have 10,000 cases in the courts of the state. And for a lawyer, wearing my civil legal hat, it's kind of like a kid being let loose in a candy store. I can pick any case I want to work on. And I like that. On the garbage case, I got to go into court, to the federal district court, for the first time in 6 years myself, and argue that case. And it felt real good as a professional to do that. I don't get to do it very often. As the governor's counsel for 4 years and the attorney general, you can't prepare for law court cases. And you give legal advice and write opinions on the Constitution. You are his advocate. I was the governor's advocate. And I argued with Alan Carter more times. Carter's got little liver pills. I like that. I used that one time in a discussion with Alan. Alan Carter was the Speaker of the Assembly, the Democratic Speaker of the Assembly, when I was counsel to the governor. And I used to debate Alan all the time on where the administration would differ from his position. And Alan is a good lawyer, a good advocate, and we're relatively good friends. But my comment was I debate Alan more than Carter's got little liver pills, and his name is Alan Carter. I've used that a couple of times in the debate. I had a lot of fun doing all this stuff. What I'm telling you is that I'm a very lucky person. I've been doing in life what I want to do my entire adult life, what I want. And I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunities from a lot of people to be able to do it. And I love being Attorney General. I love being counsel to the governor, especially Tom Cary.
What I want to know is what kind of water do you drink?
What kind of water do I drink? I hope it's wet water. It is water out of an artesian well system in my town of Oakland, where I live, that I think is some of the best tasting water in the world.
Yeah, we have well water where I live, but what about all that stuff reaching into the wells and stuff?
Let me tell you something about New Jersey again. We have a lot of wells that are closed and water supplies that are shut down in the state. And we have significant problems. We're an industrialized state with toxic contaminants both in New Jersey and coming from outside of New Jersey through underground streams. We have one of the most comprehensive water testing programs that exists anywhere in the country. We are far ahead of any other state, in both the quality of our water monitoring, the quality of our water cleanup, our capacity, the knowledge about toxic waste dumps, the containment of those dumps that have been there, the cleaning up of those dumps.
But is it good enough?
Yes, it is.
Good enough?
Well,
I've
as
never
good
been
as we
afraid
can
of
get.
anything before, and every time